Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Youth and Family Peer Advocate Hiring Toolkit Tour. So we are gathered together to kind of give you a guided tour through these two hiring toolkits, which we developed over the last year. Some of you may have seen them already. If you haven't, today we're going to take you on a little bit of a walk through each of these webinars so that you, first of all, understand how to get into them and also how to get around them. So I'm joined today by Susan Berger and Robbie Lettieri from Families Together in New York State. I'm also joined by Iriane Narcisse and Connor McCallum, who are two of my CTAC colleagues. So we'll go to the next slide. And I just want to ask everyone to chat in your name, where you are in this great state of New York. If you happen to have wandered in from another state, welcome, and you can let us know where you are and what agency you work with. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to do that. I know people are getting off their earlier call and transitioning, so we'll just let folks sign in and let us know who you are, and we'll get started in just a minute. Welcome, everybody. I see we got Western New York, the Hudson River region. We have, we got Heather, who's apparently splitting her time between Florida and the Finger Lakes. That's a nice arrangement. And folks from New York City, Long Island. Terrific. I see some Western New York people. Southern Tier is here. Excellent. See another, I'm in Albany. I see a fellow Albanian here as well. Thank you very much for signing in and letting us know who's here. Trinidad and Tobago. Nice. Marcus gets the long distance award for today. All right. Terrific. All right. We're just going to get started. I'm going to do a brief introduction with the help of Connor, and we'll get started. So I think you're familiar. Many of you have been on CTAC webinars before. I recognize a lot of your names. You've all, been joined into the webinar in listen-only mode, but we really would love to hear your comments and questions. So feel free to chat away during the webinar. The slides and the recording for this webinar will be posted within about a week or so on the CTAC website. And you can get to those recordings by navigating to our calendar. It actually says upcoming events, but if you go to today's date, you'll be able to click on this webinar once the slides have been posted, and you can access it that way. I'll say this again at the end, but at the end of the webinar, you're going to get a link to a brief survey. If you can fill that out, it helps us understand what your needs are. And helps us do our job better. And it's also an opportunity for you to let us know if there are other topics you really hope that we'll cover in the future. Next slide. So these are our presenters for today, Robbie, Susan, and myself. And I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more when they each do the sections of the webinar they're going to present. Next slide. So we've got a quick poll for everyone here today. We'd like to know a little bit more about who you are and where you're at in your process of hiring youth or family peer advocates. So you can answer both of these questions, please, and then it'll give us a little bit of a sense of where you are in your process. Just click on one of those buttons and we'll see the results in just a minute. I know by looking at this list that we have some providers that have been doing this work for a while. And I know many of you are challenged right now with workforce issues, the same workforce issues that many human services providers are facing. So I'm assuming some of you are here, just sort of looking for some ideas. I also see some, names that are new to me. So I know that in the past couple of years, many providers are newly designated to provide youth and family peer support, but maybe haven't taken that step yet. So if you fall into that category, we're really glad you're here. and are hopeful that some of the resources in these toolkits will be helpful to you. Connor, do we have some results? Yes, we do. Okay. So I see a lot of folks have youth peer advocates on staff. That's terrific. Some of you are in that kind of pre-contemplation stage where you're getting ready to hire youth peer advocates, or you're just starting to think about it. And some of you, have no current plans to hire youth peer advocates. Maybe today will entice you to consider that, and maybe you're focusing on family peer support for right now. And then in terms of family peer advocates, I see we have a lot of folks who have already hired family advocates. And again, some people who are, in various stages of thinking about that. So thanks for giving us that information. It's helpful to see where you're at in your process. Next slide, please, Connor. So this is where Connor's going to, link to our actual LMS and show you how you log into the toolkits very quickly, just because we know sometimes people get a little lost in the process. And I will say this, if you have not been into our learning management system and you do get lost, we are always available to help you, figure that out.
All right, so when you sign into the LMS, it'll just be this URL here that I've just sent in the chat box. And your account is the same account that you would have used to register for today's webinar. So it should have your information already saved. But you can also reach out to us if you need help getting signed in, but it's the same account that you use to sign up for events and everything like that in the CTAC website. So essentially, once you've signed in, you'll go to the catalog tab, and that will list all of, let me sign in first. So that will list all of the available courses that you haven't signed up for, and that's how you'll sign into a course. So I'm just going to click enroll here in this course. So you'll just click enroll, and that will actually add it to your courses. So then you want to go to the My Courses tab, and that's how you'll actually access the modules. So you'll click open and just give it a second, and you can launch from the beginning. And that's how you'll enter the course. So again, go to the catalog, enroll, and then go to My Courses to access all the courses that you're enrolled in. And then from there, it's pretty straightforward. You can just go through the course. You'd click Start Course, and it'll sort of guide you through the process. And then if you stop and you sign back in, it'll just take you back to where you were previously. So it's pretty simple once you get signed in, and there's various resources, videos, etc. Throughout the course. And was there anything else you wanted to add about just utilizing the modules?
No, just please let us know if you encounter any challenges at all. We're happy to walk you through it. If anything is amiss, it's helpful to us too, because sometimes there are things we have to repair in these modules. They seem to, mostly work, but once in a while there's a glitch. So thank you so much, Connor. And if you can switch to the next slide. So I just want to say very briefly why we created these toolkits. We found we were getting a lot of the same questions. Does anybody have an example of a job description for a youth peer advocate? Or, what should I be asking in interviews when I hire family peer advocates to be sure I get, folks with the right skill set? And we also had some questions about, what are some approaches to onboarding? And we also saw that agencies that sort of jumped in with both feet without thinking about how a youth or family peer advocate role might look like and how to really help adapt the organizational culture to fit that role. Some of those organizations were having some challenges. So we thought this is a way to kind of give everybody a little bit of an orientation. We also hope that you'll share resources you develop with us, and then we can add those to the toolkit as well. Next slide, Connor. So just very quickly, the kinds of things you're going to find in the toolkit include some, tip sheets and some, videos, interviews of youth and family peer advocates and their supervisors with their tips about, hiring and onboarding and supporting and retaining family and youth peer advocates. You'll also find that there are some, the next one there, Connor, there's some actual documents that are samples that you can feel free to copy and adapt to meet your needs. We also will have webinars, links to recorded webinars on this topic. And last but not least, you'll find, all kinds of advice in there. We try to not, spend too much time talking at you and instead give you tools. But we do have some tips that come from some experience that your colleagues have in the field. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robbie. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about the Youth Peer Advocate Hiring and Support Toolkit.
Hey everybody, my name is Robbie Lettieri. I am the Youth Peer Services Training and Credentialing Manager at Families Together in New York State. And as Anne pointed out, today I'm going to be talking about the hiring toolkit specifically for youth peer advocates. So in the toolkit, we have Intro to Youth Peer Services before you begin or getting ready to hire youth peer advocates, which really goes into role clarity and misconceptions surrounding the youth peer advocate role. We have hiring, which is looking at how you're going to recruit and interview YPAs, training and credentialing and onboarding, supervision, support and retention, beyond supervision, so organizational culture, looking at youth guided practice and how to promote success in youth peer roles, and then resources, which I will be reviewing a number of them today. But on the actual resource page, there are much more that will go in depth. And again, we're going to talk about them today. Next slide, please. So an introduction to youth peer services, there are a number of different benefits of working with YPAs, not only for the people that you are trying to serve, but also looking at an organizational level. So in the hiring toolkit, it will really go in depth, and it will really outline a number of different ways on some of the benefits. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is actually two of the documents or two of the resources in the toolkit, specifically looking at what is and what is not the role of the YPA. So I feel like a lot of times people are granted funding to hire YPAs, but we don't really know what they do or what their job should look like. So looking at these resources and just exploring the toolkit in general, it's a great way to fully understand and comprehend what YPAs can and cannot do, so that they are really doing what they are trained to do, and also so that they're not doing kind of mundane tasks like a desk duty or janitorial duties. And they're really out there promoting youth culture and supporting youth to the services that they need. Next slide, please. Thank you. So recruiting, screening, and interviewing, there are a lot of different challenges for where do we find YPAs, who is our target audience. As most of you probably already know, YPAs are people between the ages of 18 and 30 years old who have some kind of lived experience in a child serving system. So this will kind of go over how you can recruit, how you can promote your listings, how you can interview them to ensure success. And it will also give you a number of different sample descriptions. So you can see what other companies are having YPAs do. In a different section, it will kind of talk about what YPAs can do that you as an organization will be able to bill Medicaid for through CFTSS. And then suggestions for reviewing your HR policies and procedures, which may not be a good fit for YPAs. So it's really just a precautionary, it's being proactive rather than reactive. Next slide, please. So this is one of the other resources, the YPA screening tool. And it really is just a checklist for you to have. Looking at resumes and cover letters, does it fit what you're looking for? Do they have the education requirements? Do they have the relevant trainings? Are they credentialed as a YPA? Or are they credentialed as an adult peer specialist or NYCPS? And do they need to get certified or credentialed as a youth peer advocate, which I assume the answer would be yes, unless you were grant funded. Relevant volunteer experience, resume, and then just moving on. So it's just a general and basic way for you to kind of go through and see, is this person a good fit for this role or not? I see Melia put in the chat box, where do we get this information? So this will be on the hiring toolkit, which we can go over in a little bit more, but all of this is going to be on the toolkit through CTAC. So if you use your login, like Connor was explaining earlier, that you used to register for this account, for this webinar, you can go on CTAC and you can enroll in the training toolkit or the YPA Supervisors track, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So the training and credentialing for YPAs, there are two different credentials that they can receive. So the first one is the provisional, which they have to complete the level 1 online training before completing the application. after they apply or before they apply, they have to, one, meet the lived experience requirements. They have to be between the ages of 18 and 30, and they have to either upload a birth certificate, a passport, a driver's license, or a state ID. They have to have a proof of education. So whether that's a high school diploma, GED, a college degree, or a comparable skills form, which you as a supervisor will be able to say, I see this person, I know that they are capable of offering A, B, and C. And then you would just sign it off, check it, and send it in, and that would count as an education requirement. 2 letters of recommendation they will need. So we like to really promote them not using a direct supervisor for their recommendation on their provisional credential, only because when it comes time for their professional credential, they will need to have you as that reference. So we want to hold off on that. So whether that's a coworker, a peer, colleague, we just won't accept family members or providers. So no therapists, social workers, mental health counselors, anything like that. And then a signed code of ethics. After they complete the provisional credential, their credential will be valid for 18 months before they will then have to apply for the professional credential, which is when they will complete the level 2 online training, as well as completing the virtual or in-person training, which if it was in person, it would be 2 8-hour days, or when it's online or virtual, it's 4 4-hour days, followed by 5 individual coaching calls where we really drive home the values and principles, as well as a role clarity, promoting professional and personal self-care, and really just looking at triumphs and challenges within the workplace. So in order to complete their professional application, they need to have at least 600 hours of working experience as a youth care advocate. They have to have that letter of recommendation from their direct supervisor, and they have to have a signed code of ethics. Something that is also really important for organizations and for direct supervisors is when someone hires a provisionally credentialed youth care advocate, they have gone through level 1 training, but it's not until they complete their professional credential or their professional training that they're really going to fully understand it. So it's really important that you all as supervisors will be able to understand as well, which I'll talk about in a little bit. If you were up to take the supervisor track through CTEC, you would first go through their online training requirements, as well as have the resources that really explain what youth care advocates do and what they don't do, and why they were hired in the first place, and how they can really engage and support young people. Next slide, please. So this is another resource that we have on the toolkit, and it really just goes over both the provisional and professional credentials. It breaks it down. We have another PDF or document that's titled The 6 Steps to Becoming a Professionally Credentialed Youth Care Advocate. And rather than have all those 6 steps and it be really intimidating for somebody, we just broke it down so that they see, okay, there's really just 2 things that we have to do first to get provisionally credentialed, and then another 2 to 3 in order to get my professional credential. Next slide, please. So the resources page on CTEC, it's really great. So not only will you have all the documents needed to look at how someone can get their credential, you can also look at how to promote youth culture within your organization. You can look at how to continue to clarify their roles and how they can grow as a youth care advocate. There's a whole different array of resources on here if you ever choose to go check it out, and I highly recommend that you do. Next slide, please. So additional resources, for one, we have the youth peer meeting and the peer supervisors meeting, which the regional youth partners here at Families Together host on a monthly basis. So the YPMs, or youth peer meetings, are for direct YPAs to go and meet with other YPAs in their region, as well as with the RYP, to really talk about what's going on in their role, what they can do to be more effective in their role. If they're having certain challenges, the RYP will be able to clarify that. And if they can't, they will definitely connect them to somebody who can. And so these are the RYPs that we have right now for New York City, Hudson, and Western. We're in the process of hiring 2 new RYPs for the Long Island and Central region. And then the PSMs, has anybody ever gone to one of the peer supervisors meetings? Yeah, maybe. All right, so that's just, it's very similar to the youth peer meeting, but specifically for supervisors where they can get the resources and support that they need. Alrighty, and then the next slide. So this is that youth care advocate orientation training directly for supervisors. So not only will you be able to see their training that they're going through, but you will have access to a number of different resources that are beneficial for you, for your organization, and directly for the youth peer advocates. And we also, we of course would love for youth peer advocates to be able to grow in their role and become a supervisor themselves. But for those of you who are not or were not employed as youth peer advocates prior to this, but you are acting as a supervisor right now, it's a really good way for you to truly understand what youth peer advocates can do and the beauty of the service. Alrighty, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any right now. I think there were a couple in the chat box. How do you
So Robbie,
suggest-
one question I saw from Farrelly really was around, addressing some of the challenges right now that people are experiencing in terms of hiring and maybe retaining youth peer advocates. So, Robbie, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the toolkit resources that might help with that. Obviously, we know it's a larger issue and it's being, it's a challenge everywhere. But how do you see the toolkit helping providers who are having some difficulty, really hiring and keeping their staff?
So I've heard from a lot of youth advocates that they come into this role because they have a passion for supporting other young people, and they want to be able to take their lived experience to be able to kind of pay it forward and give themselves a purpose. And a lot of times in these roles, they're not doing what youth advocates were designed or created to do. So I think that for one, looking at the role clarity portion of the toolkit will really help you in ensuring that youth advocates are performing what they were hired to do in the first place, as well as ensuring it over a duration of time that they're continuing to do what they were meant to do, what you can bill Medicaid for and what they were trained to do and what they know at their core. Some of the more challenging topics surrounding, pay is not something that we necessarily have an answer for right now, but it is being considered, and we are having ongoing discussions with OMH about, because the salaries or compensation for youth peer services is so low right now. So there is a high turnover rate because of that. But I think primarily, if you can ensure that youth peer advocates are offering youth peer services and not taking on too much work, or if you only have one youth peer advocate on your team, consider hiring another so that they won't have such an overloaded caseload, or not too many young people that they have to support to the point that it drains them and what they are capable of doing. So that would be the primary section that I would say.
Yeah, you're really speaking, Robbie, to the retention side of that workforce equation, right?
Yeah.
I always think of that song, make new friends, but keep the old, right? So, the outreach piece, there are also some resources in the toolkit to support outreach. But I do think that what Robbie's talking about is often overlooked in the sense that, trying to make sure that the job is satisfying and manageable for the staff that you have, and that they feel well supported can really help you retain staff. Replacing staff is an expensive and time-consuming process. I don't need to tell any of you that. And so I do think we tried to look at this question a little bit from both sides of the equation. Farrelly's also asking about how do you suggest engaging YPAs that are aging out of their roles? So maybe you can address that, Robbie.
Yeah, so for YPAs who are aging out, this is this is definitely a challenge that we are always looking at. And if they weren't to go on to become supervisors, there is the Academy of Peer Services where someone would be able to become an adult peer specialist, or that New York Certified Peer Specialist, NYCPS. And that is for anyone over the age of 18 that is going to be working in the adult system. And if they really love working in peer roles and supporting people by utilizing their own lived experience, that would be a great role for them. And I hope I'm answering that correctly, if that's what you meant by engaging, but is that what you meant?
Farrelly says yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
So, and Anne-Marie commented that one of the challenges is that, the productivity that's required in order to bill enough hours to support the, the staff member is challenging, right? And that has to do with the rate issue that you were talking about before. I wonder if, with telehealth, folks are finding, I know there are some challenges engaging folks in telehealth, but where that works, that may be, and making sure staff feel trained and comfortable and have a variety of strategies to be engaging in a telehealth kind of environment. I wonder if that helps a little bit with that workload. I don't know, but it might be. But the issue that Anne Marie identified is one that we have heard from a lot of folks, that and especially if you're actually doing work out in the community, there's the driving time and all that makes it a bit challenging, for sure.
I've also heard from a lot of Ypas that when they are working directly in the community and they are driving to a number of different locations in a single day, they might not be getting that mileage reimbursement. So it's costing them a lot of money to meet with a lot of different youth. So if your agency can offer mileage reimbursement, that might be really beneficial. But I definitely understand the need for having high caseloads. But there is also, it can be draining for YPAs.
Mm-hmm. It is tough to find that right mix, right? That, provides you with enough hours to bill and revenue, and also is still a manageable job. There's a question about what's the salary for a YPA, and it really depends on the agency. And some are paid hourly and some are actually paid a salary. There is certainly a difference between the kind of typical rates, pay rates upstate and then versus New York City and Long Island. But I think it's tough to answer that question globally, because it really depends on the agency, and some agencies are pooling multiple funding streams to try to get those salaries up. If you want more information on the rates, so if you're billing Medicaid, there's rate information, and I can provide that when we post the slides. I can add a resource around that to the slides, to the CFTSS homepage on the Department of Health's website, where you can get some more information about rates and rules and all kinds of things associated with these services as Medicaid billable services.
I see you asked it specifically for New York City. And there's also a really large gap between state-funded agencies and then grant-funded agencies. So if somebody is receiving this directly from OMH, they might have a salary range of maybe $40,000 a year, whereas if they're being funded through DOHMH or a different grant, we've seen it be anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000, which is really high, and it's really encouraging to see that. But again, there is a very large scale of what agencies have the capacity of offering as salaries and compensation.
Right. Often youth peer advocates start at or a little bit above minimum wage, and hopefully there's increases that they get as they gain experience. Down in the city, sometimes that's a little bit higher, so we're looking at anywhere starting hourly at between, $15 an hour up to $22 an hour. So, and I see a question about documentation, Kaveen. We have a whole set of documentation workbooks on the CTAC website. Connor probably can post a link to that in the chat, and I can also include that in the slides for everyone as well. So, there's the resources are designed to, walk anyone. They're not specific to youth or family peers, but to walk anyone through kind of best practices around documentation. And there we have the magical appearing link to the documentation done right workbooks. Thank you, Connor. So there's a new one there's a new workbook with additional practice exercises that should be posted this week or next. We just finished developing that. And again, this is a great example of you all asked and we put it together. And so hopefully it will be helpful. It seems to be so far. We'll keep letting us know where the rub is, and we'll keep trying to provide resources for you.
Yeah, all right. And I'm just going to also add to that, Anne, that if you are taking the Family Peer Advocate PEP training, that we also have a module that focuses on documentation. So between the workbooks and the module, I think you'll have a really good amount of information.
Great. And I hope I'm going to pronounce your name right. Ertuania is saying that they have some positions. I'm not sure what agency LSA is, but they have 2 openings for youth peer advocates, and they're wondering where they can post it, and Susan's actually going to cover that in the next section of the webinar. So, so I think, Robbie, I think unless you have anything else to say, I think we'll, okay, lsarecovery.org. Terrific. Susan will talk a little bit more about that, where you can send where you can send your job postings to Families Together to hopefully get a bigger audience for that. Anything else, Robbie?
No, I think that's it. If there are any questions after Susan goes, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I'm going to hand it over to Susan right now.
Terrific. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. So, you know, I'm going to be going through the Family Peer Advocate Hiring Toolkit, and we have tried to, I guess, coordinate the Family Peer Advocate Toolkit and the Youth Peer Advocate Toolkit. So they're a little bit similar in how they're laid out. I'm going to go over in more detail now the Family Peer Advocate Toolkit. So if I can, oh, great. Connor's reading my mind. That's always wonderful. So the toolkit, as Anne mentioned, is divided into two parts. We have the hiring family peer advocate, and then a whole other section on that focuses on ensuring that the family peer advocate is welcomed into the agency and that everybody in the agency has an understanding of their role and the importance of the work that they do. So I'm going to run through each of the sections of the toolkit to orient you to what you can find in each section. And then I'm also, you know, the great thing about the toolkit, I think, is that you can go through the whole module, look at all the resources, and get a sense of what's there. And then you can go back and just kind of home in on the sections that you need, and also the resources that you need. So next slide. So we start the toolkit really with a brief overview. And as part of the overview, we've included a family peer advocate support services successful hiring checklist, which is kind of a summary of the action items that we're recommending. So some of it you'll see that you'll be able to see that you've already covered. So you can focus on the areas that you feel like you need to develop. Everything that we go over in the toolkit itself is reflected in the checklist. So if there's a section that you're saying, you know, I could use a little bit of help here, you know, you can see what you need to kind of check off to have really delved into that section and be working it within your agency. Next slide. So the first section, we delve right into roles and responsibilities. It's important to have a clear understanding of the role of the FPA within the agency, and a good sense of the work that they need to do with families. Thinking through this role and the job activities up front can help avoid a lot of problems later with role confusion. Here we outline common FPA activities that are part of your role, and the screenshot on the right, on the left, sorry, on the left is what we have in the actual module, and then the screenshots on the right throughout my presentation are going to be samples of resources that we have. So on the right, you know, in the module, we outline the activities, and as you open those folders, you'll get more information. On the left is the official family peer advocate services definition. So you can get a lot of information about, in this document, about the activities that family peer advocates participate in, and a definition of their role and eligibility for individuals who might want to be an FPA. And this will help you make sure that you're following the guidelines that for family peer advocates. Next slide. So once you've kind of defined the role, you can really start to identify the skills and qualities that a person would need to be successful in the role of the family peer advocate. And we developed some tools here for you as well. Within the actual module, we have an interview by an experienced FPA supervisor, and who in this particular video really looks at focusing on strength-based orientation. So when she's looking for family peer advocates, she's looking for somebody who is really strength-based. And on the right is an example of one of the resources that we provide in the resource section. It's a list of characteristics that experienced FPA supervisors have found important to look for when you're hiring a family peer advocate. So, aside from, wanting to have a strength-based approach, you want the advocate to be able to individualize services. There needs to be a certain amount of flexibility. And we go through a list of characteristics that you might want to look for. Next slide, please. So the next section is hiring and recruiting. And, we try to kind of lay them out in the order which you'd be kind of doing these activities. So in the module, we review some tips and offer suggestions also from experienced family peer advocates who are providing, supervision and doing actual FPA work within provider organizations. We interviewed a lot of people to kind of get a wealth of information from people who are in the field. So it's not only, us kind of talking about it from our perspective. We branched out to get the perspective of people who are doing this work day to day. In the resource section, we also have some sample job postings. We have some flyers and brochures that you can customize for your needs. All of these documents are customizable. So if you see something that you like in, example 1 and something that you like in example 3, you can just mix them all up together. Our goal was to give you some job postings that other agencies have found to be successful. So, it's kind of like skipping over, doing a couple of, putting out some job ads that maybe wouldn't, draw the right people in. So next slide, please, Connor. Great. So next is kind of setting expectations and screening. So right from the start, I think it's important to be clear with candidates and even yourself about what the role is by developing a strong job description. Something where, anybody reading it can really get a sense of what the role is and what that person will be doing. In the resource section, you can link to several sample job descriptions from organizations that are, have years of experience providing family peer support services. And I just want to give a shout out to all those organizations that sent us their job descriptions. We de-identified them, so you probably won't be able to tell whose job description it is, but we have several that are already made up. We also added a template that you can use to kind of build your own job description, and giving you the opportunity to look at the categories that are in a lot of different job descriptions that we felt were really strong. And, kind of adding your own flair to it, or just looking at, and identifying with one of the job descriptions that's already completed, and then you'll have the opportunity to use that one. Next slide. After you do a little bit of screening, perhaps, hopefully you take that role or that, that suggestion. And then, you're going to move on to interviewing a portion of the family peer advocates that, that apply. It's really a crucial part of the hiring process because it's where you really get to know the candidates. So within the module, we provide some tips for interviewing. And in the resource section, as you can see here, we have a list of questions that were developed by, again, family peer advocates and supervisors who are doing the work. And they're specifically geared toward interviewing family peer advocates. So the questions seek to get to kind of the center of the role. So you can get a sense of whether or not that person, their skills and abilities are going to match up with the job you want them to do. We also have an assessment sheet that you can use as you go through the interviews. It's a way to take notes. And then the areas relate to questions that you would be asking. And we also include a link to the Families Together in New York State page where you can find the regional parent advisors. And the reason that we do that is because we really recommend that you include a family peer advocate, if you have one in your agency, in the interviewing process. They really add a unique perspective because they're doing the work and they understand the culture. If you don't have a family peer advocate who is on your staff already, you can reach out to one of the parent advisors from Families Together in New York State, the one in your region, or there are two in your region actually, and you can include them in the interview process if you are interested to get that same family peer advocate perspective. Next slide, please, Connor. So after you hire a family peer advocate, you're going to want to have them trained and credentialed to become a credentialed family peer advocate. So we have lots of information in the module on this topic, but we also included a couple of things in the resources. So in the resource section, we have the 6 steps to a family peer advocate credential. And as I have up on this slide, a family peer advocate credential requirements, and that outlines the requirements for the 2 different kinds of credentials. And this is very similar to what Robbie was talking about for youth peer advocates. We have that same document for family peer advocates. And of course, the Families Together workforce development pages, where we link you to the training and all the information you need for credentialing. Okay, so on the next slide, we really talk, we're switching over to the second module, which is onboarding and supporting family peer advocates. And the screenshot there you also saw from Connor, and you would be launching the second of the 2 modules for the toolkit. Next. So the first section of the second module is onboarding new family peer advocates. And it's important to have an onboarding protocol for all staff, right? Most agencies have something that they do, but we would argue that it's especially important for peer staff. And there's no one way to do this. There's no necessarily right way to do this. But we hope that this section will give you some ideas about a framework that might work for you and your agency to onboard FPAs specifically. So, for example, we outline areas that you might want to cover during a thorough onboarding process. And in the resource section, we have several resources that you can use there, one of which I'm showing here, which is the background checklist form, which helps you organize the many assessments and background checks that are required for FPAs to work with families. And we created a new tool called the FPA Best Practices Support Tool, which is a model you can work from to help structure the new FPA's work and serve as a framework for providing feedback as they start to go out into the field. I would really recommend you take a look at that. It's a couple of pages, but it outlines all the tasks and responsibilities, and it's a great way for you to be able to give feedback to new family advocates as they start with the role. Next slide. For many organizations, this might be the first time that you're implementing a peer service. So in many ways, it's the same as any other staff positions, but because FPAs will be working to amplify the voice of parents and parent participation, and also bringing a parent perspective into the work in a different way, it's important as leaders to think about your organization's culture with respect to how aligned it is with a couple of different areas, including strength-based, family-driven, and the idea of reducing stigma. Because infusing these principles of family peer support into your agency is so important. We provide a checklist so you can go through and see where you're at with that and what else you might need to do. Next slide. Communication and communicating about the family peer advocate role with other staff is really important. There are often misconceptions about what family peer advocates do and the role that they play. And, you know, we have a resource kind of outlining a bunch of those misconceptions and just straightening them out. And we found that that's been really important. The role information that we talked about earlier is important as well. It's you know, saves a whole lot of problems in the beginning if you have a job description and everybody understands the role that this family peer advocate is going to play. Next slide. So there's no magic bullet for retention. There's no answer that, you know, is a one size fits all, but we do know what we do know is that strong supervision, good work-life balance, and self-care are critical. We've included some tools here that particularly focus on self-care. We have copies in English and Spanish of a tool called the Protocol, which helps to workers to self-assess their levels of burnout, secondary trauma, and compassion satisfaction. We also have a self-care questionnaire for staff and a self-care plan that people can fill out. Next slide, please. So I just want to point out again that the resource page is kind of a separate area. The resource pages, you can get to the resource pages through all of the sections of the toolkit. But once you've gone through the toolkit, you don't need to keep going back to the toolkit and going through the toolkit to find those resources. They're kind of in a separate area within the modules. So if, you know, you can find all sorts of different documents there and you can get to them directly. Next slide. Robbie mentioned that there's a youth peer advocate orientation training for supervisors. We also have one for family peer advocates. I have it circled here in the My Courses area. So you would need to first enroll and then it would go into your courses. It's important for those who are providing CFTSS services that if their family peer advocates are not being supervised by a family peer advocate, that the non-family peer advocate supervisors are required to take this training. Next slide. Here again is a resource, is a a way to get to the parent advisor contact information. Aside from being helpful in interviewing, they hold regional meetings for family peer advocates and their supervisors. They provide technical assistance to programs who are just starting family peer support programs. And they also offer training opportunities for family peer advocates.
Sorry about that. I clicked the link.
That's okay.
Where are we? Hold on. There we go.
Okay, next slide. So the next slide is Connor is getting it is really about the workforce development pages of the Family Peer Advocate of the Families Together in New York State website. We have information on YPA training and FPA training, and you can see in the screenshot where you would kind of click to get there. We talk about where you can register for the training, a little bit of information about the training, how to apply online for a credential or print out the credentialing applications, and all the other documents related to becoming a credentialed YPA or FPA. And we've provided the links in the PowerPoint. Next slide. So somebody asked about this earlier. Families Together has an employment page on our website. We post family peer advocate and youth peer advocate positions as a service to help advocates who are looking for jobs and also to help agencies who are looking for advocates. We also send a direct email with your job ad if you are an agency looking for an FPA or YPA to all credentialed advocates in your region. So it's up on our website, but we also do additional outreach. So if you have a job for an FPA or a YPA that you want to post, you would contact Joanna who works in the Workforce Development Department at joanna@ftnys.org. That's Joanna Alanis. And that's it for my slides, I think. Do I have any questions in here?
There are a couple questions and a couple things that we might be able to clarify. Whoops.
Okay.
You guys hear me? Oh, it's telling me I'm muted, even though I guess you can hear me.
Yeah.
You know, Zoom has its own little fun that plays with us every day. Two organizational things that might help those of you who are new to all of this. So CTAC, the Community Technical Assistance Center, we're hosting this webinar, and we work in close partnership with Families Together in New York State. Families Together in New York State is actually the organization that credentials youth and family peer advocates. And Robbie and Susan head up the work to do that credentialing. And then jointly, we develop and deliver both the training for the youth and family peer advocates and technical assistance for organizations that are doing this work. So when it comes, you know, even though the toolkits include some information about how to, you know, the process of being trained and credentialed, when you actually go to do that, you're interacting more with Families Together in New York State. We had some questions about where to find this information. So you can go into the CTAC Self-Learning Center and look in the course catalog, and you can navigate to both of these toolkits, the Youth Peer Advocate Hiring Toolkit and the Family Peer Advocate Hiring Toolkit. And all of the resources that Susan and Robbie have been sharing will be available to you there, including some information on training and credentialing. If you want additional information on training and credentialing, you can use those email addresses we just provided, or you can, go on the Families Together website and learn some more there. So a couple of other questions. One is this required? It is if you are a New York State agency that is billing Medicaid for family and youth peer support, your staff need to be trained and credentialed. There are some other programs in New York State that require training and credentialing. So if you're getting any sort of funding to do youth and family work, peer work, you may want to check and see what those funding streams require of you. So, and we recommend it to everybody. It's a great process. It helps to define and support this, these very specific professions of youth and family peer support. And it's a great credential for those providers to have. So another question that I'll let Susan talk a little bit about is how much time does it take to get and Robbie too, a family or a youth peer advocate credential from the beginning of training through completion of the professional credential?
So, there are a couple of factors involved in how long it takes. If an advocate is working full time, it can take as little as 6 months to go from, having nothing to a professional credential. Typically, it takes a little bit longer than that, but it really depends on the advocate. So if you are an agency that's providing CFTSS services and you of course will want your advocate to be credentialed as quickly as possible, the provisional credential, and this is the same for youth peer advocates, requires that an advocate complete 14 modules and then fill out an application to apply for the provisional credential. Once they're provisionally credentialed, then the agency can bill Medicaid. And there's no hourly requirement. This can happen as quickly as the advocate can actually do it. There are 14 modules. They take about an hour each. And then, there's the filling out of the application. And that can be a very quick process or, kind of a slower process. But I would say that, on average, a family peer advocate or youth peer advocate could have a provisional credential within a couple of weeks to a month of them starting employment. Some youth peer advocates and family peer advocates have already taken the training and already become provisionally credentialed before they apply for jobs. So you might be able to hire someone who is already, has the provisional credential. I hope that answers the question. Let's see.
Yeah, and the training modules take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes to complete. And again, your progress is saved. You can come and go. You can go back and review things. There's a quiz at the end, but you can retake the quiz. It's meant to, really be engaging. And we've gotten good feedback from folks about those online modules. Somebody asked a question about, Robbie, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I was just going to say that Susan really covered it for the Ypas as well. Rather than 14 modules, like for the FPAs, for the Ypas, there's only 7 modules for level 1 and 5 for level 2. But similar to FPAs, it can take anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks to complete their level 1 online training. And once we have everything submitted on our application portal, if they email it directly to us, we can, if they sent in everything and their application is perfect, we can approve it within a day. That's most likely not going to be the case, and we're going to have some back and forth take place. So we're getting everything that has to be uploaded, and everything looks great. And that normally will take around 2 to 4 weeks, but only on the lower end.
Yeah, I see there's a question. Thanks, Robbie. See there's a question on funding. So if you are a designated agency, the family peer advocates and youth peer advocates who take the training, there's no fee for the training. It's funded through the Office of Mental Health. So credentialing and training are funded through the Office of Mental Health for agencies that are designated for the people who work at those agencies. So if you're not designated, then and you're not working under CFTSS, then you can call our office and we'll work, or email us and we work something out with you. Our goal is to credential all of the family peer advocates in New York State that are eligible for the credential. So we want to work with agencies and family peer advocates who are, sorry about that, who are eligible.
So I see a few other questions coming in, but we're reaching, we are at the end of our time. If we have not answered your question, please feel free to reach out to us. You'll see, Connor, can you switch the slide just ahead? When you get the slide deck, you're going to see some, but here are our email addresses. So if we've left you with your question unanswered, you can reach out to me and I can triage the question and send it to the person who can best answer it. But we really want to thank you all for joining us today, and we hope everyone has a restful and healthy and wonderful Thanksgiving gathering. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you all very much. And thank you to Robbie and Susan and Connor and Irianne for your help getting this webinar ready today.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Bye.